Hello, welcome to my channel, Just Being Jewel, where I, Jewel, just being me, talk about books. Thank you for being here. I first off want to apologize if there are a lot of fireworks going off in the background. I live in the South, and it is the week of 4th of July, and therefore, people are just setting off fireworks all week. All week. I get to deal with this. But it being the first week of July, it means that June is now over, so I can now do my June wrap up. So I read 4 books in June for a total of 1,468 pages. And historically, I have gone in chronological order of the books that I've read. I've decided to switch it up a little bit, and I'm going to do the books that I read from the ones that I least liked to I most liked. And I'm gonna start getting away from doing star ratings because sometimes I give things the same star rating and they're still wildly different on my personal spectrum of why I liked them and why I didn't like them. So I just feel like star ratings are too minimalistic or simplistic to really use for the books that I'm reading because I still have a lot more feelings and things to say about them than just slapping a numerical assignment to it to decide how much I liked it. So let's go ahead and get started. The book that I liked the least this month was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. It is a collection of short stories in the Lunar Chronicles. So I don't think that this by any means was a bad book. I think that if you are a fan of the Lunar Chronicles, you will like this. I have this really bad habit of always feeling like I need to read the short stories or the anthologies or the novellas or like the point fives of every series that I enjoyed. And I never enjoy those short stories because they're not complete enough for me. They're not enough to get me hooked and to feel invested. And I just need to stop doing it. So that's why it wasn't for me. There were several prequel stories in it. And the prequel stories, I feel like, did not add too much to the characters that we know. Like a lot of the prequel stories was information we already got through the novels. So I wasn't feeling like I was like, oh man, this is all revolutionary and this is stuff that I had no idea about. They're all just more context or things that you already kind of knew about these characters and their histories. I will say the very last story in the book, the end story, was the one story that really could have been part of the series. Like this story should have really been the epilogue for the series because I think it wrapped everything up better than the actual series epilogue did. So if you're a fan of the Lunar Chronicles, you might like reading that. I like the Lunar Chronicles, but I don't like them enough to bother reading that. I'm glad that I read it though, because it's been on my shelf for literal years, and now I can move it off the TBR and put it over here with the actual Chronicles. The next book that I read was The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. So I joined a book club, a fantasy book club in St. Petersburg, Florida, and this was the book club read for the month. So even though this is my second least liked book, I still liked it a lot actually. I think that the overall story, overall premise, because the premise for this book is 3 sisters in 1893, late 1800s, who have all gone different ways in life, are being magically brought back together in what starts off as a fight for women's suffrage and turns into a fight for not only women's rights, but the labor movement and just rights in general, civil rights. And I really liked this book for a lot of reasons. One, because I'm here for women's rights, and I like witchy stories. I like witchcraft. I enjoyed a lot of the quotes in this book. Overall, I did like this book because of the story. I do think that a lot of the prose is very lyrical. There were a lot of great quotable moments in it. I also really liked it for the ending. If the ending hadn't been what it was, I don't think that I would have liked it as much as I did. I think there were a lot of themes about rage and I don't want to say revenge, but there were moments in the end that really made it come full circle, full story for me that I really liked. My things that I didn't like about this book, because it wasn't perfect by any means. As I said in book club, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I had issues with the pacing. I felt like sometimes the pacing was really slow. The author would very often tell you things, but not actually use scenarios to show you them. And I'd rather be shown instead of told in my books. So that bugs me a little bit. I also had a bit of, I know it's magical realism, and I know there are technically like rules to the magic in this. It still felt like there wasn't enough structure to the magic, because I could never quite define what the magic could or couldn't do. So that was a bit of a problem for me. But I mean, overall, I liked it. So will I be reading it again anytime soon? I don't think so. But it was an enjoyable novel. The next book on my wrap up here is Clariel by Garth Nix. So if you've watched any of my videos, I've talked about Clariel several times now. But Clariel is the fourth book in the Aporson series. So the Aporson series originally starts out following a necromancer who is on the good side of necromancy. The Aporson is supposed to tie the dead to the world of the dead using these necromantic bells. So the first book, Sabriel, follows Sabriel, and the second and third book, Lyriel and Aporson follow later on in Sabriel's timeline, like 40 years later. And then this book is 600 years before Sabriel. So this book follows the character Clariel, and she is not an Aporson. She does not have anything to do with necromancy. She is just a girl who wants to live in the forest. But her mom is a high-level goldsmith. So her mom forces her to move into the city so that her mom could follow her career. And a lot of this book, Clariel gets wrapped up into these courtly politics that she doesn't want anything to do with. The entire time she's just trying to figure out a way for her future to be going back to the woods and living in the forest, which I found very moving. And the one thing about this book that I really love is that it actually is a character from the first one of the first three books in the series, and you don't realize it towards the very end. This is like a villain origin story, and it's so well done because the entire time you understand where she's coming from. You're rooting for her. You get why she does the things that she does. And that moment when I figured out who she was from the first three books and it all clicked was just chef's kiss. I loved it. It was very, very what I needed in a book. So Clariel will go down as one of my favorite books probably in 2022 because of it got me really back into the Aporson series, and I'm excited to continue reading the other two books that I haven't read yet. And the final book in my June wrap-up is going to be How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. I know it's not a fantasy book. Who is she? We're all surprised here. I bought this absolutely on a whim. I saw it in a bookstore. I thought this cover's beautiful. This resisting the attention economy really caught my attention. And then there is a quote at the very, very beginning, in like the first chapter, that is quoting a tweet. And this was what sold me to buy the book. This quote, let me get past the introduction to the first chapter. This quote says, wakes up and looks at phone. Let's see what fresh horrors await me on the fresh horrors device. Because if that's not relatable. So, things that I loved about this book. This is going to be not the most cohesive wrap-up summary of a book ever. Because I have a lot of thoughts and I can't find a way to put them in one format where it just seamlessly goes from one to the other. So this is going to be a little bit of like a word vomit here, but I'm going to get it all out. So first of all, this book is not actually a how-to guide on anything. There is no clear step 1, step 2, step 3. It's more of a thought-provoking collection of discussions. The other thing about this book is not about how to disconnect from social media. So I know there are a lot of really bad reviews for this on Goodreads. There's a lot of good ones too, but I think the people who gave it bad reviews, their biggest complaint is this was not actually a guide, and it doesn't teach me about how to disconnect from the internet or from the screens. And I think that's what I love about it, is because Jenny does actually talk in this book about how we have to find a third space. We can't just say, oh, we're going to be obsessed and live in social media. And we can't also just go, oh, forget all of it. I'm going to go live in the mountains and not be part of society at all. It's about finding and existing in a third space where you are not beholden to social media. It also talks a lot about the attention economy and how the very act of paying attention to something in our capitalistic society has to be monetized nowadays. You have to be productive, and you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, that hustle culture, is worth something. And if you are scrolling on Instagram or Facebook and paying attention to that, or even YouTube and paying attention to that, somebody is monetizing what you're looking at by tracking it, by figuring you out. A lot of it is things that we can't escape, but rather be conscious of. And because we're conscious of it, we can actively decide where we want to put our attentions. She also discusses, in this book, she discusses race and class and how those things play a part in whether or not you can participate in the attention economy. Some people can't afford not to participate in this quote-unquote hustle culture. They have to work to earn money to survive. So she recognizes that. This book is very well researched. The last 20 pages are all citations from all the different source material she pulls from and she's discussing. A couple of my complaints on this book, and they're really very minimal, but my only couple complaints are that she does meander at times. There are times in the book where she's going on and on and on about something, and I'm starting to lose my focus or lose the point of what she's saying. It also does occasionally, because it's so well researched, read a bit like a science journal here or there. I believe the author herself calls it like an essay, but there are times where she's talking about some philosophical discussion somewhere or some study, and I start to lose my connection to what's happening and what she's talking about in the book. Overall, though, I think it was a really great discussion, an eye-opener on doing things that are for your own soul's growth and not to be monetized, not to feel productive, not to have somebody paying attention to you and to post it on Instagram or to post it on Facebook or to post it on YouTube, but it's just to do something because you want to do it, and it makes you think more about your world and connect to the world you're currently in. For her, this happens to be bird watching. She talks a lot about bird watching and exploring her bioregion and learning more about the lands that she lives in. But she does say that she talks about it because it's what she connects to, whereas for other people, they might have something else that they connect with, and that is their version of, soul growth almost. What are you going to do to broaden your life that is not about earning money, that is not about being a statistic or being a like or a click. And it was really very eye-opening for me, and I can't recommend it enough. So I will say it's not going to be for everybody. If you are perfectly happy about how you are living your life right now, this might not be your book. But if you are feeling increasingly less connected in this super high, fast-paced, capitalistic world where every single thing you do has to be earning you money or progressing you in some sort of way, read it. I loved it. So that is my wrap up for June. My 4 books that I read. I am really proud of myself for reading 4 books because through March, April, and May, I really got into a crazy reading slump and I really was like behind the ball in reading, and I didn't do any of the reading that I enjoy. So I'm glad that I'm getting back into the groove, and I'll see you guys next video. Thank you for watching. My cats are losing it in the background. I don't know if you can hear.